The Royal Blue Podcast from the Liverpool Echo.
Hello everybody and welcome back to the Royal Blue Podcast. I'm Phil Kirkbride and today joined by Dave Prentice and Gavin Buckland as we chew the fat over all the major talking points at Goodison Park as the international break draws to an end and the proper footy returns to us once again. Norwich City at home on Saturday, 3 o'clock kickoff at Goodison. I think that's probably the best place to start, chaps. A victory would give us 17 points after 13 games. 17 points, currently good enough to be sixth in the league. Is everything so tight and too tight at the minute for us to be making any rational judgment on the start?
It's a weird old Premier League at the moment, isn't it? You've got the sides, or a couple of sides at the top who are streaking away, and then everybody else seems to be concertinaed in the middle, and so you can make progress very easily with a couple of wins back to back. Something that we've managed to find beyond us this season. Or equally, you can find yourself, down at the bottom end as we were only a fortnight ago, flirting with the relegation zone. So it's very, very important to try and discover some consistency. And, come on, Southampton away was a deserved, if albeit closer result than it should have been. But Everton have got to show some consistency now and follow that up against a Norwich team who are struggling, who've played some nice, easy on the eye football, who have scored a couple of notable results this season, but the bottom of the league for a reason. So Everton have to win. I mean, it just seems weird, doesn't it, that every game Marco Silva seems to have managed over the last month has been a must-win game. But this probably is another one of them. If he doesn't win it, people start asking questions again and looking over the shoulders and, dare I say, looking a little bit further ahead at what December has to hold.
Yeah, since he's gone into this must-win game cycle, he's won 3, drew 1 and lost 1. Maybe he should have
maybe he needs pressure on him all the time.
Must-win season,
it's
So,
this is our cup final.
Yeah. So, I'm with Prenno on that one. It's Liverpool streaking ahead. I mean, there's 3 or 4 teams, isn't it, around the 25-point mark, and then there's 17, isn't it? Norwich, I can't remember, one win, is it a point in 6 games, something like that.
Do you think their start to season and the perception of how well they've adapted to Premier League football has been almost exclusively based on that victory against City?
Yeah, and the slide, the Finnish fella scoring for fun at the start of the season.
And to be fair, for an hour at Anfield on the opening night,
they
looked really decent, and then got battered
4-1. So I'm with Prenno on this. I'm comfortable about December. I don't fear it at all.
Go on, expand.
Because the one
wish I had his confidence.
The one thing we've learnt about Marco since he joined Everton is that he can set up against the big teams. He knows how to set up defensively and set the sides up against the big teams, both home and away, to be honest with you. And I think when he has struggled, as we've seen from the start of this season and last season, is when we play teams who will block us off and sit deep. So I'm not too concerned about December at this stage.
Norwich come to Goodison with a reputation as an attacking team, very expansive in that respect. From what I'm told, I didn't watch them in the Championship last season, but that's the way they played. Almost a bit like, for people of a certain vintage, the Keegan Newcastle type.
Yeah.
If you're the manager of Norwich City, you're bottom of the league, do you abandon those principles and try and do a Sheffield United and frustrate us?
I don't think he can do that, can you?
Right, okay, well that's kind of the
managers
question,
have their own styles, don't they? I don't think.
Surely that plays into Everton's hands, doesn't it?
It should do. They almost seem to have accepted as well that they're going to have a struggle this season. I mean, they've been asked a few times about strengthening the squad in January, and the manager, Daniel Farke, has just said, no, it's not happening. We haven't got any money. We've got to be realistic. We have got what we've got. And it's almost like they're not going to change anything. They accept that this season could be a struggle for them, but they're going to give their supporters something to enjoy and play, sort of decent quality football during the course of it. Might be a little naive to, accept that. Maybe it's very realistic, I don't know. But let's hope that does play into Everton's hands on Saturday, because, like I say, it's important.
Yeah, I mean, consecutive wins. I remember Alan Kirkbride saying years ago at the Sharp, if you're in the Premier League and you win consecutive matches, it can change the whole outlook of the season completely. And I think that's where we are at the moment, our bit broken by a fortnight of the international break. And tomorrow is obviously an eminently winnable game. And I think that will take us nicely into December, where we've got some big games against teams that we played well against last year, and we're obviously still in the Carabao Cup. So I'm reasonably optimistic at this stage. The one thing that will hamper us, of course, is we've got a few injuries in key areas of the pitch. I think the key thing going forward is the form of Holgate and Davis.
Yeah.
If they can maintain their form over December like they have done over the last sort of 3-4 games against the bigger teams, then I think we'll be in good shape. The one thing that worries me a little bit about them is that, okay, Spurs at home, you could say it's a big game, is the opposition that we played over the last 3 or 4 games and tomorrow. But if they can maintain their form of the next 4 or 5 weeks, then I think hopefully we'll sort of be able to cover for the injuries that we've had in poor form.
Prenno, Gav says, or maybe yourself, sorry, an eminently winnable game. What would give you the confidence, and what case would you make for saying we will win this eminently winnable game, whereas against Sheffield United, Villa, those were seen as winnable games, but we didn't win those games. What's changed for you, or maybe what hasn't changed for you, that gives you more confidence going into Saturday?
I wouldn't say I'm wildly confident. I mean, we've got a win, so at Southampton, which should automatically, so give the players a little bit of confidence. Confidence is such a hugely important quality in modern football. And as Gav says, we've got a number of individuals that are playing, so in form football at the moment. Holgate, I have to hold my hand up and say that earlier in the season, I had reservations. I was concerned if he was to come in because, the couple of brief cameos we'd seen from him as a substitute, he'd looked shaky. He's looked excellent. And he's also not just defended well, he's knitted play together well and brought the ball forward and, and passed the ball very, very well. Tom Davis is playing very, very good quality football at the moment. And, that's been necessary because obviously Andre Gomes is going to be a huge miss. I think the fact that it's Norwich and they will come and they will have a go at Everton is what should play into our hands, and hopefully those informed players, I'll include Richarlison in that as well, can take advantage. But I wouldn't say massively confident because the one thing that we seem to have lacked always under Marco Silva is consistency. Just when you get 2 or 3 wins together, you think, right, that's it. He nailed it. They go and throw a bad one in. I'm thinking back to last season when we had that great run where we beat, Chelsea, beat Arsenal, beat Man United, which are great results. But in the middle of that, we had that shocker at Fulham.
And Newcastle as well.
And Newcastle, yeah. So it's just...
Shocking final 26 minutes.
It's just like, the mindset isn't quite right. They seem to have issues concentrating totally. And comes on the back of an international week. That worries me as well because it sounds like I'm a real doom-monger here.
I was going to say, Prenno,
I'll counter that. The return from the last international break was West Ham at home. Yeah. And probably the best performance of the season.
Well, let's hope that's the case. I mean, Richarlison's had a long trip, hasn't he? But, not Yerry Mina, was he involved? He was an unused substitute, wasn't he? So, some of the players have had long trips, so it doesn't give Marco Silva much time to actually prepare for the game. But equally, Norwich will be in a similar boat, you would imagine. So the kind of matches that we should be winning, just the fact that we haven't, sort of done it consistently is why I just throw a little bit of a caveat into that. But no, come on, this is Norwich City at home. God, we should be looking at 2 or 3-0 here. And, an enjoyable afternoon. That's what I want. A game where we can actually relax and enjoy it. Not 1-0 up with 10 minutes to go, like biting your fingernails and praying for the final whistle.
I don't know, Gav, if you agree, but certainly once the home form it felt like Marco had got a grip of the home form last season, and ever since then, even though we've had disappointments, we had Sheffield United disappointment, we've lost the odd couple of games. I go to Goodison now far more confident than I did at the in that early stage of Koeman's last season and any time under Allardyce. Do you go to the ground with the same feeling?
Yeah, I think I don't know what our form, the calendar year at home is, but I would suspect we got beat by Sheffield United and City
twice.
I think, have we won virtually every other
Drew
Liverpool.
Yeah. Start of the year it was bad, wasn't it? Wolves came and a couple of others.
Since Wolves in February.
Since that it's been good.
We ended last season good. It was a 7 consecutive wins, something like that, I can't remember. So, I think we're fine at home. And even against the bigger teams, we don't want to go over the away form, do we? Though we did win on Saturday, on week last Saturday. In answer to your question, I think we've shown ourselves capable of beating and or at least competing against every other Premier League team at Goodison. So it doesn't hold no fears for me. It's away from home, I think, where the setup of the team maybe is not suitable. But having said that, always important to get your first away win in the season, isn't it? Yeah, it just takes the pressure off. And I think
that was Howard Kendall's wasn't it?
Yeah. And I think if we, look at the fixtures in December and beyond, I think I'm pretty confident, but definitely the home form is fine, and I expect us to continue tomorrow.
Okay, so in terms of looking at what sort of team Marco will play, and let's talk specifically, because again on the agenda at Marco Silva's press conference this afternoon at Finch Farm, Moise Kean, Prenno, does he play from the start? Does he start on the bench? If he does play from the start, where do you play him?
No, he doesn't. I'm afraid 2 goals for Italy under 21s, don't really qualify you for a Premier League recall. He's a young lad. He's still settling into a different environment, a different football club, and he's finding it a bit tough. So I don't think, the time is quite right for him. Fingers crossed if we can get that 2 or 3-0 lead that I mentioned earlier, and there's like half an hour, 35 minutes to go, that could be the time for him to really get some, so quality time with the games stretched and wide open. And, so hopefully, so pop a goal or 2 in just to boost his confidence. But I don't think we've seen enough yet to warrant an inclusion. And if you were to start him, where'd you play him? I know Marco Silva made a point of referencing the fact that he scored 2 goals for Italy under 21s from playing wide on the right. It was almost like a little dig to some of the guys that have criticised that selection earlier this season. But to then leave out Theo Walcott, so far that I don't think you can really. I think Theo's done well the last few games. No, I can't really see a place for him other than on the substitutes bench.
Gavin,
I think he'll get some game time.
Yeah,
I would hope. I think having dropped him from the squad and all that came in the aftermath of that, I think he'd be quite keen.
Oh yeah,
as part of their relationship.
No pun intended.
Yeah. I think that's part of their relationship between player and coach. I think he'll want to get him on the pitch at some point tomorrow.
And he'll get a good reception. I think most fans are sympathetic to his season he's had.
We've all slipped in.
Well, exactly. No one's, he's a young kid, isn't he? Come on, I mean, it's because it's happened once before in Italy. People are saying he's clearly a serial offender, which is nonsense. Give the lad a little bit of latitude.
Yeah, I think that's all done and dusted. We've got to move on. So I think he'll get some game time tomorrow, assuming that we are in a position to give him some. I don't think I'll see him start. No. But since Heston, I think he should play on the right, because I just don't think he's got the tools to play centre forward in the Premier League at the moment because of his age and stature. But there's the thing is though, is if you play 4-2-3-1 and you're playing the right hand side, you're not really a winger, are you? You're sort of like a right hand side midfielder, right hand side midfielder. So you're expected to track back and go forward like Theo does and Bernard does effectively, and that's not his game, is it? I think when Marco goes back to Marco, still desiring to play 4-3-3, where he can play right wing up top in a 4-3-3, which is a completely different role than playing, right hand side in a 4-2-3-1, where he can just stay up the pitch all the time and make the most of his strengths. Doesn't have to track back that much. And I think playing in 4-2-3-1 at 19 wide right is a big ask for somebody who's played through the middle. Though I do see Marco's point. I think maybe Marco thinks that he wants to play right hand side because hasn't got the tools to play centre forward at the moment. Yeah. But it goes back to the formation for me. Ideally, you get the best out of Kean, I think, in a 4-3-3 on the right hand side.
And that is a formation that Marco on the record has said he would like to play, or something that he favours. But he obviously would play it if he had the tools available, wouldn't he? And equally, are we getting too hung up on the idea of finding a system that suits Kean? Because the idea maybe that we need to play a system that gets the best out of him, but it might not get the best out of the players that he has, other players he has available. Exactly. And I'm not saying we should change the system to suit Kean, but I think when say to play right wing, that's playing in a 4-3-3 up front, isn't it? You're not playing right wing in a 4-2-3-1 where you're on the right hand side of the midfield. It's a different game altogether. And I suspect
his best midfield combination. He's a bit hamstrung at the moment, isn't he? Literally,
Very much
the injuries in midfield means he probably can't play 4-3-3, and if he can't play 4-3-3, then playing Kean becomes a bit of an issue.
The system, I mean, the team picks itself largely now because of the problems that he's got injury wise. I mean, it was a real dilemma with Bernard and Iwobi and Sigurdsson. Those three. How do you fit them in? Because Iwobi clearly looks better in the number 10 role, but that now means Sigurdsson can't play, and you all know, so how highly I think of Sigurdsson. Bernard was playing out of his skin when he was playing the left wing, wing role. So just trying to get all three of them in. As it is, so Bernard, it's too soon. We're told, for tomorrow. So it basically picks itself. Iwobi will play slightly out of position on the left. Gylfi Sigurdsson, I'm delighted to say, will play at number 10. And I'd hope Richarlison will continue as a number 9. Nothing against Dominic Calvert-Lewin, but Richarlison just offers more of a goal threat, and he's just a bit cuter if he stays on his feet. But let's not go down that road.
That was a big goal, wasn't it? The Richarlison goal.
It was a much more difficult finish than it looked as well.
Yeah.
Actually, the one position I suppose that you could, query that we haven't is right back, and I know it just seems to be accepted, knowledge now that Sidibe, is the guy in possession, and Coleman's going to try and oust him. I wasn't overly convinced with him, sit down at Southampton until the cross for the goal. Now, all right, you were down there, Phil. I wasn't. I was watching it in a pub, but there was lots of disgruntlement about his defensive contributions up until that moment when he suddenly escaped and produced an absolute peach of a cross, which is maybe why he was in the team in the first place, because of the quality he delivers. But I don't think it's an straightforward. Yes, he's definitely in there, and Coleman's definitely out.
Yeah,
Coleman had something a bit different.
Yeah, I don't think he's absolutely nailed it down,
No.
But I certainly think I don't think you can drop him without reason at the minute, if you know what I mean. I think considering his experience in the Premier League extends to what, five games, is it? I think he's done very well. I think he just needs to strike that balance between his natural enthusiasm and aggression to go forward at every opportunity, with an understanding that in the Premier League you will get caught out if you make the wrong call. So
Brighton.
Well, yeah, quite. But yeah, I think that in terms of his performance at Southampton, I thought he was okay. And then obviously, that's part of why he's in the team, though, isn't it? We'd expect that from Coleman. And with respect to Seamus, hasn't really been producing that, has he?
Yeah, to be fair, people in pubs like to moan anyway. And there was a lot of that. There was a lot of that going on. Despite Everton producing a very dominant performance, that wasn't really reflected in the number of goals they scored.
Without trying to sort of stretch the Kean point, is Kean and Sidibe doesn't naturally strike it as being a very effective defensive duo on the right-hand side of the pitch.
And that's a very good point, isn't it? Because as well as trying to find a position or a place for Kean to get minutes and etc., he's a component in a team, isn't he? And as you say, that is a very it's not even.
It's an up and down. It's an up and down one, isn't it?
And there's not naturally a great deal of innate kind of defensive kind of cautiousness in that.
If you're asking the centre forward to basically play up and down on the right hand side, and that's a very difficult thing to do in a 4-2-3-1. When you're playing right hand side. So, and especially if you've got Sidibe playing, so it's striking a balance. So you do wonder, Kean, where would you play him? It's an interesting conundrum for Marco to resolve.
We will move on now in the final part of the podcast today. Not strictly speaking to do with Everton, but I think it's worth discussing because it was the talking point, the story this week, and will be Spurs sacking Pochettino, appointing Jose Mourinho, and obviously, there are naturally at this sort of stage of uncertainty and Marco having to still convince a section of the fan base questions of why shouldn't we go and get Pochettino? Why is Mourinho not come to us? Type of thing. What was your reaction to that crazy 12 hours or whatever it was?
I was disappointed and frustrated because I've long been banging the drum for ages about Jose Mourinho being the level of elite, class manager that Everton should be targeting. And we've asked the question many times, sort of the Goodison powers that be. And we're led to believe that Jose Mourinho loves Goodison Park as a venue. He gets on very well with the Everton hierarchy. But such is the baggage that comes with him. I don't think he would ever be seriously considered. That disappoints me a little bit, because to me, I'd accept that baggage. I'd accept the ego. I'd accept the tantrums and the arguments that he will bring, because he's a winner. He will win things. I mean, that message that was leaked to the national papers this week, he'd sent a private text message to Harry Kane, which made it onto the back page of the newspapers, telling his skipper, "You will win trophies with me." All right, it's hot air, but the fans love it. They love hearing, ambition and, so declarations like that. And he can back it up. He's not just saying it, so a bit of hot air. He can just look to his record and, his rap sheets, and it's absolutely sensational. So he's never going to be Everton manager, which I'm a little bit disappointed by. Pochettino, again, that's one that's worth bearing in mind, certainly. But, I think Farhad Moshiri, Marco Silva is his man. Yes. He wants to give him as much time as possible. He doesn't want to be seen to be an owner that, so hires and fires at the drop of a hat, the first little, so streaky run, we're getting shut of you. And you do have to have faith. Loyalty in football is a quality we don't see enough of. So I understand, so why Pochettino would not be targeted. It'd be wrong, to bring him in right now and pull the rug from under Marco Silva. But they are the level of managers that, should Marco Silva fail, 12 months, 18 months, 2 years down the line, that level of manager is the kind of manager that Everton should be targeting.
Yeah, you'd be disappointed if there wasn't a conversation at some point, wasn't there? I mean, personally about Mourinho, I think he's, we were talking about Harry Catterick. We had the podcast about Harry Catterick and said one of the things that fell apart after 70 was that you get 10 years at the top as a manager. And then after that, you get new rivals, your playing style is outdated and you generally become tired of being a manager and players become tired of you being a manager. And I think Mourinho's in that place now. Yeah. And I think, he's talking yesterday about, I know it's an Everton podcast, but it's still relevant, about, I've got new style and all that. Going back to what we talked before about Norwich, it's very, very difficult to change your style as a manager. You just have a natural one. So I do think that we were right to avoid him for that reason. And I do think that I'd like to see Silva given time, because it's Moshiri's appointments, isn't he?
Correct.
And you've got to give him time. And going back to, hopefully we've got out of that lull. Goes back to, we don't want to be seeing to fire a manager every 18 months. That doesn't do you any good as a club. We've got to give Marco time, and I hope he, justifies the fate that he's, been given.
So we thought that was going to be that segment. Gav has made a very good point to me just in the middle of that segment. Interesting comments from our former director of football, Steve Walsh, Prenno, namely on Lukaku, saying he told Jose Mourinho, "You're signing a big baby," and sort of, I'm paraphrasing, but said he's not his type of player, not a team player, and not somebody he would sort of favour signing. And secondly, a list of players that he'd said we were going to sign up.
Harry Maguire, Andy Robertson, Erland Haaland, who he must have been about 14 at the time when he was recommended. No, I mean, okay, the Lukaku quote, you wouldn't disagree with that. He was a footballer that did, seem to have occasional petulance issues, so describing him as a big baby. Yeah, so why not? The players that were offered to Everton, I don't know. It just highlighted once again how it was a football club at odds with itself when Steve Walsh was here. He was a director of football, working with a manager that, I am reliably informed couldn't stand him. And so, they didn't work well together. They both had different ideas. They both had different targets. And so you'd have a manager, so bringing in players like Davy Klaassen, which was his man. You'd have Steve Walsh, so bringing in, so other players who were clearly his men, and then trying to meld them into one, which is not, a very successful formula for a football club. So it was understandable when, so the decision was made to, so part company with him. And for me, Marcel Brands has been a breath of fresh air. I think he's got a long-term strategy. He's got a long-term plan. And it's in sync, with the manager, with the boardroom members, with everybody else in the football club. So, there might be occasional grumblings, occasional raising of eyebrows from supporters. I've heard a few recently about Marcel's contribution in some areas of the club. But for me, he has been an absolute top-class appointment. And it's chalk and cheese, Steve Walsh and Marcel Brands. And I think we've got the better end of the deal.
Yeah, I think, we were podding at the time, it was 2016, wasn't it, Phil? I think you really underestimate the amount of change that's required at the club when Moshiri came in with his money and influence and power. It is like, you know, that thing about living in a 3-bedroom semi and winning the pools, your whole life changes, your lifestyle changes, you know, what you can do changes, and you have to adjust accordingly. And, you know, you really underestimate what Everton had to do as a result of Moshiri coming in, the way it was run, the appointments that to be made, and that, getting that balance right, while keeping the values of the club. And that was a massive job to do. I still feel as if that job's not complete, by the way. So I think, you know, in that transition period, like 2016-17, it was always going to be awkward for anybody coming in, because Moshiri spoke about that window of opportunity, didn't he? You know, and there was always going to be casualties, I think, as a consequence. You know, we ain't going to strike it lucky straight away, where it's going to be trial and error. And I think Walsh is a casualty of that, and also the fact that, you know, he'd never been a director of football, had he been a scout? I mean, I'm not even sure whether he was a director of football when you see Marcel's influence now. And it's quite funny, really. It's like there's always two tourisms, isn't there? A department manager or scout or whatever always talks about, like, you know, when they get sacked, always talks about the people that they try to bring into the club, you know. And somebody joining the club always says there's players there that I've tried to buy in the past. I was thinking about Mourinho yesterday.
And when a manager comes in, I don't think these players are fitting.
There's standard things that are said, isn't there? Like when arriving and departing managers and directors of football and stuff, you know, you can tick them off. And the Walsh is just, employing that behaviour. But it was quite interesting. And what it just shows you there is, like, we just didn't have, like, that governance right, did we? The decision making within the club wasn't right, which is to be expected, because it was a massive change, Moshiri coming in, and especially when you got Ronald, who maybe not be the best to to negotiate with. So it was not surprising, really, that it didn't work out in retrospect. But, you know, as Dave says, you know, I think Marcel's in now, and I think he's obviously far more experienced and got a lot more stature and contacts within the role.
I think it's quite notable as well that, you know, there hasn't been an absolute cavalry charge of football clubs waiting to re-employ him, has there?
I think there's a reference to he's been doing some sort of consultancy.
And
I think, in fairness, I think a lot of people in football I speak to still rate him as a scout. But I think there's an acceptance that the role as director of football was perhaps at this stage.
Maybe that was the problem. He was promoted beyond his capabilities. You know, he was a man that should have been out there scouting. Although that, again, was an issue during his time at Everton. I know a lot of eyebrows were always raised that he was always at Goodison Park watching the first team. And people were suggesting, well, because he created this chain of scouts that, you know, reports back to him. But, you know, when he was questioned about, you know, so this, you know, basically season ticket that he had, his reply was that he needed to know how the first team was playing so he could identify players that would fit into that shape, which seems a bit of a strange, you know, sort of reasoning. But no, we're being a little bit twisted now.
But I think there was you just really underestimate the amount of work that was involved at the club, the way the club was run and operated and organised. You know, when Moshiri came in, there was an interesting comment I remember a couple of years ago by Steve Walsh's brother Mickey, who of course played for Everton, who me and Prenno know well. You know,
that's a different story.
That's a different story.
Yeah, wow.
And they asked him. He was asked about why it gone wrong for his brother Evan. He said, he was always fighting with one hand tied behind his back, you know, which is also what he said.
It's effectively saying he had
and I think that's not because he wasn't great at his job. I just think that we just didn't have that decision-making thing right with the club, but that was always to be expected. Once Moshiri came in, it was going to take time to settle in, you know.
Mickey Walsh, a player who once managed to put the ball over the City ground crossbar from standing underneath it. I thought I had ever done that.
That was the goal of straw, wasn't it? Yeah.
You remembered it well, yeah. He scored 3 goals in his Everton career, 1 away at Aston Villa and 2 against Finn Harps.
Yeah.
It was just one of those mad transfers that never really, you know, sort of came off. 300 grand, which was a lot of money at the time.
The Liverpool were after him as well, you know.
He scored an absolutely stunning goal of the season for Blackpool. Everton bought him, and he was supposed to be Bob Latchford's, you know, sort of natural strike partner. And it just never worked. And the crowd was so sympathetic towards him. I remember the home game against Wimbledon, we beat them 8-0 in the League Cup when Latchford had scored 2. And Everton got a penalty, and the crowd started chanting Mickey Walsh's name, you know, so to let him finally get off the mark and score. But no, Bob runs at his hat trick, took it and put it away. That sort of summed up his Everton career.
I've got to end up on a bit of, you know, nostalgia with me himself being on the pod, you know.
No, I just thought it's
great. It's relevant, though, isn't it?
It's sort of indicative that, you know, sort of the Walsh family were never really, you know, meant for Everton Football Club.
Prediction time. Prenno, Everton v Norwich Saturday.
Oh, yes. But we're going to win 3-0. It's going to be a comfortable, sort of 3-0 enjoyable afternoon where we're going to go home with a spring in our step.
I was gutted that Charleston scored against Southampton because I had it down for 1-1, didn't I? I was gutted. I'm going to go for I'll go with 3-0 tonight.
And we don't want Moise Kean to be getting off the mark on Saturday. He wants to save it for December the 4th for the big one at Anfield.
Yeah.
His first goal for the football club, was it yesterday? It was the 25th anniversary of Duncan Ferguson doing that against Liverpool. So, let's save it for big Moise Kean.
Yeah, I agree. I think 3-0. I'd fed that through to Prenno earlier for the betting preview. Yeah, so a clean sweep of 3-0. We'll take that, won't we?
Excellent.
Excellent, chaps. Thanks for your company and thank you very much for listening. This has been the Royal Blue Podcast.
You've been listening to the Royal Blue Podcast from the Liverpool Echo.